Hi everyone. Welcome to our channel Gyan and you're watching GauriBot Talks where we talk about anything and everything about robotics. So in the past few years, there are few terms that have taken the world by a storm, and those include artificial intelligence, machine learning, and even more recently deep learning. And when it comes to robotics, it is undoubtedly very closely linked to all of these terms. So today, for our session, we have Mr. Dhiraj Gandhi, who has been very closely working with the field of robot learning since the past few years. After working in India for some time on multiple robotics applications, he came to US to first pursue his internship and then his master's from Carnegie Mellon University in robotics. Since his graduation, he has been working as a research engineer in this field with Facebook AI Research, which is also called FAIR. So, without wasting any further time, let's just dive into his experiences and his journey. So, yeah, let's get started. Hi, Dhiraj.
Hi, thank you for the great introduction.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to talk to you. So I think this has been the first question that I have been asking almost everybody whom I have invited. So when and how did you first get introduced to robotics?
Oh, I would say when I was preparing for IIT coaching, basically IIT exam, JEE exam. So at that time, I was mainly interested in like mechatronics, like mechanical and electrical parts. So there are different subjects in physics. So mainly I was interested in physics, and in physics I was more interested in mechanics plus electronics section. And when I talk to people after like what field I should take, which branch I should take, so I was in a lot of confusion whether I should take mechanical or electronics. But then someone suggested that there are a couple of stuff that you can do which are mixture of both. And robotics was one of them. So that's how I thought, okay, when I will go to college, the first thing I will do is I will try to take part in some robotics competition. And that's how I started, I would say, in the robotics. And then I met a couple of people who enabled me to do, who introduced me to various things in the robotics. And that's how I started, I would say.
Nice. That's very interesting. So, like, were you mainly focusing on the mechanical side of those projects, or like, were you sort of looking into a holistic approach towards it?
So when I started initially, I would say I started with competitions mainly, and those competitions were organized in I don't know many people know or not, but they used to be like mechanical uh, robots, and then there used to be completely autonomous robots. So I started with mechanical robots, where the first thing I tried was, I think that I should not say a robot. It was like a toy car which you can handle with a remote. But I think attaching motors, wheels, everything. So I started with that stuff in the beginning. But then there used to be a competition called line following robots. So in mechanical part there is no microcontroller or anything that is needed, or even sensors that's needed. But in the line following, there was like you have to use those. I forgot actually the sensor name, IR sensor or something, where you detect a line, then you write a code based on it. You have to apply speeds on the wheels. So I would say I started with the mechanical part, and then I moved to the autonomous section, and that too very basic stuff in the college time.
Right. So, after your graduation, you were working with high-tech robotic systems in India, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you decided, like, when you were working with them, you decided to pursue internship with Professor Abhinav Gupta, so at CMU. So, how did this thing happen? Like, how was your journey up till that internship?
So I would say ki, during college I was not very well involved in a lot of robotic structure, so I wasn't very well known with the ROS, various sensors. But in high tech, I got an opportunity to work with them. I got an opportunity to learn lots of ROS stuff, lots of Linux stuff, because I came from a mechanical stream. And means you can definitely learn those things on your own, but in coursework they don't teach you these things.
Hmm.
So during company, I stayed in company for very like 7 months period, but I got to know a lot, uh,
Hmm.
like how to interact with different sensors. How there was one project which was for industry, another project was for a, completely research thing. So I got
Right.
a flavor of different things, and I was not like persistently like looking for other opportunities at that time particularly.
Hmm.
But I was in contact with one of my senior, Laurel Pinto, who was
Hmm.
working with Abhinav Gupta at CMU, and
Hmm.
they wanted someone who has a hands-on experience with robots and know a little bit on the machine learning side as well. And
Hmm.
that's how he recommended me to Abhinav. And I got like there was some little bit interview procedure, and then that's how I got into this internship.
Nice. So, like you mentioned that they wanted a little bit of machine learning experience. So, when did you first get your machine learning experience? Was it at high tech?
And so in the last year, everyone. So in the last year of my bachelor's, I got placed in a company, but that was a financial sector company. And
Okay.
over the 4 years during my bachelor's, I was pursuing the robotics, and I wanted to do something on the similar line as well after I
Hmm.
graduate. So I was
Right.
looking for companies which were in the India at that time, and
Huh.
they wanted some particular stuffs. They wanted some AI background, they wanted some path planning stuff, and that's how
Hmm.
I started looking for two streams, I would say. One was on path planning,
Hmm.
and another was on the machine learning side, where I took like Andrew Ng's the initial Coursera course, which is
Okay.
not too much in detail, but kind of gave me an overview.
Hmm.
But when I joined, that was still coursework. I didn't have any hands-on experience. But
Hmm.
when I joined a company, I met another guy at a company whose name was Gaurav, and
Hmm.
he used to know lots of these online courses.
Okay. Okay.
And then he told me that there is a course called CS231N, which is offered from Stanford, and they
Okay.
teach you like the machine learning, I would say the deep learning part,
Hmm.
in kind of from ground up approach. So you write like all the layers, forward, backward pass, and that's how I
Great.
would say I started into the machine learning things.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I think actually that's very helpful also for a lot of people who are listening to this, because a lot of times students find it very hard when it comes to choosing what online courses, to study from. It's not about the certification, it's about like from what level do they start teaching, and like, how deep do they go into the concepts. So I think, yeah, like the one you suggested from Stanford, that's definitely a really interesting course to get into. So yeah, that's a very useful information. Yeah. Also, like when we talk about your experience till the time you started your internship at CMU, how much was like your exposure with like core software and core programming, because you were from a hardware background and
So, as I mentioned earlier as well, during college, I would say I learned very little. Like, I got to know about the ROS in my last year. I got to, like, I started coding in Python in my last year of the college.
hmm,
But I would say during the time I spent at high tech, I got good hands-on experience both on Python, C++
okay.
language side, and for the software infrastructure, I would say I also got a good exposure to ROS.
Hmm.
Yeah, and in CMU, I would say I was mainly using this information and building on top of it. Because in
Right.
research lab there won't be because many times you work individually. At least when
Hmm.
I started at CMU with Abhinav, there were very little person in our labs. Like Laurel and I was the one who were working on robotics part. So there were not a lot of people, but I think based on that experience, I build on, like, if I want to add something, I used to search. There were a couple of people around as well whom I can ask, which were from the other labs. So I
Hmm.
think that's how I build up on my software skills for the robotic side. But
Right.
now in deep learning also there are lots of frameworks which are coming up. So when I started in 2016, there was a Cafe and Torch which was famous, and
Hmm.
I didn't use them before coming to CMU.
Hmm.
So on when I started working at CMU, mainly we were using like images and some haptic data as the input, and definitely when images comes, people now thinks of like the convolutional layer. So yeah, I started using like this learning and using this software infrastructure, which is like Cafe, Torch, and now I think every software is like evolving.
Right.
Cafe had some drawbacks, so people came up with PyTorch, TensorFlow. So I think now,
Right.
as new framework comes based on their advantage, we switch. But I think now I am very much stick to PyTorch, which I like a lot.
Nice. That's really nice. So I think now I think since you are mentioning about all of these different frameworks, it's a good point to actually stop and first understand what exactly are these terms when it comes to artificial intelligence, deep learning, machine learning, and then what you're working on, robot learning. So can you like explain in some layman terms what exactly do these terms mean and how are they linked to each other?
So let's start. I would say all these terms are self-explanatory. Let's start with machine learning. So it's basically machine learns on their own. So there are a couple of tasks for which you can't write hand coded, like
Hmm.
if this happens, then this will happen. This happens, this. So you can't write this kind of algorithms. So for those kind of things, you have to rely on a data. So machine learning is a field which can provide us with the tools from to extract information based on this kind of data. For example, let's say you want to predict the price of a house based on how big it is, how many rooms it has, how many bathroom it has, but there is no exact code you can write. And that if you have this many numbers of rooms, you have this much price. So it all depends on like what is the you means even human want to predict, they will also look at the data which is available for that particular area, and based on that they predict. So machine learning will provide us with the tools to automate these kind of things. So in machine learning also there are lots of things. So one is deep learning, where I would say deep learning is basically uh, there are various ways you can do a machine learning thing. One is based on neural networks, where people it's a conception that they are inspired by a human, where you have a neurons and then one neuron fire another neuron fires another. So it's based on that. But in deep learning, what is exactly the deep is that the framework is deep. So you have you have layers of neurons. So if you have a large number of layers of neurons, you call it a deep learning. If you have shallow, then it's a shallow learning, but no one uses shallow learning term. It's
Yeah.
basically, yeah, it's basically a neural network. So in deep learning also, for a particular task, some kind of filters are more appropriate. For computer vision tasks, there are convolutional filters which are more important. So people have come up with this kind of convolutional layers, fully connected layers, and there are a bunch of things to overcome overfitting, dropout, and this all comes in the deep learning part. So robot learning is also self-explanatory. Basically, robot interact with the environment and then try to learn something out of it.
Hmm.
But the peculiar thing which is different from conventional machine learning stuff is that over here there is not a labeled data that is already available. So in image classification, there is images of cats with label that they are cats, images of dogs with label of dog, but there is not such data available for robots. So robot has to interact with environment. They have to come up with what are the good strategies to solve this task. So these all things comes in a robot learning things. So let's say there are a couple of objects placed on a table which is in front of a robot, and then robot has to grasp those objects. because there are wide variety of objects. There can be like it's hard to write an algorithm which can say that okay, for this object you have to grasp in this way. So one way to solve this problem is robot initially tries random grasp on those objects, and then based on whether some grasp were successful or not, you can robot can use that supervision to train itself. So this all comes in robot learning, I would say.
Okay, nice. I think that's a very helpful explanation for anybody who is like unknown, and even if they know about these terms, vaguely, it's a good sort of a starting point for them to learn about these things. So I think now, since we are getting into the technical details, so why not you explain a little bit more about like how your project was like when you were doing your internship at CMU?
So my initial project was robotic heavy, I would say. The very beginning project, which was for short period of time as well, where
Hmm.
what we wanted to do was we wanted to learn feature representations for images. So basically what happens is that in convolutional layer you can learn features and like using convolutional layers, and those features are transferable. So what I mean by
Hmm.
transferable is that you can train them for one task and then use them for the other task. So you can train them for a classification task and then you can use them for a object detection task. So that's completely different, but you can learn like use features which was learned for different tasks.
Hmm.
But the way it used to happen in the computer vision community is that there used to be images, there used to be a label. Someone like then the deep learning just learns some mapping from images to labels. So this used to happen in a very passive manner where someone is labeling the image. But if you look at humans, the way we deal with objects, the way we'll get to know about our environment is by active exploring it. Means
Hmm.
if I show you the image of a sofa, you can figure out just by image that the sofa is a soft or sofa is a hard. But
Hmm.
so no one explicitly told you about this supervision. You interacted with environment and that's how you learned about it.
Hmm.
So in this project, the initial small period of time project, this was the main idea where the robot interacts with object, and based on that interaction it tries to learn the features out of it. So this
Okay.
is like we
Hmm.
were trying the baby on the robot, where baby, so if you look at the baby, what they do is they look at object from different point of view, they throw object, they poke object in their mouth, they do lots of these things just to
Hmm.
interact with whatever like whatever environment they are in. So we
Hmm.
also had the similar environment for robot, where robot was tasked to grasp, poke, look at same object from different point of view. And
Hmm.
in that paper we found out, in that project we found out that we can learn a very good visual representation out of this task as well, out of this
Great.
active learning framework as well. So
Hmm.
based on that, I moved on to another project. This was for a very short period of time. I moved on to another
Hmm.
project where uh, the initial project was completely on the tabletop environment. But if you look at our that tabletop environment was still with a white background, and that is very I would say fabricated environment rather than real environment setting. So let's say now you are challenged with how can you collect this kind of interaction data in day-to-day life.
Hmm.
That was another project where we wanted to get this data in diverse setting, no fabrication of the environment. You can go to anyone's home and you can collect this interaction data. So over here,
Hmm.
what I mean by interaction was mainly the haptic data. Let's say you touch something and what you feel. Let's say you touch door, how you feel. You touch sofa, you touch different kind of object. So for
Hmm.
that, what we did was we attached haptic sensors on a drone, and drone used to poke lots of objects,
Oh, okay.
and
Hmm.
like drone used to collide with lots of objects, and then you used to get images and the haptic data.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, so that was so the initial goal of that project was to learn some visual representation out of it. But after collecting data for some time, we also realized that we can use this data to train we can use this data to solve something else as well. And that
Hmm.
something else was avoiding collisions. Because now
Hmm.
drone collided with lots of objects, it knows how it feels when you collide with something, and you can use this
Right.
behavior to learn something, learn a policy which can basically avoid obstacles.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting project, but I think one question that comes to my mind, like, is like, now since we are all stuck at home, right? And there are a lot of students who definitely want to work on all these, robot learning projects, but they are at home. So, what would you suggest for them? Like, how can they, acquire all these skills, considering they are at home where they do not have access to all the hardware that you had? So, what would you suggest to them?
I think anyone would suggest that a replacement for hardware is basically a simulator.
Hmm.
You can rely on simulator. I think there are lots of simulators currently available, which you can use. And
Hmm.
I think there are also lots of papers which are coming out, which instead of even in this like COVID-19 situation, because lots of people can't do, even research labs can't do experiments on real robot. They are
Right.
doing experiment on the simulators, and even conferences are happy to have results on simulators as well. But that's on the research side. But I would say there are lots of uh, simulators out there. But I think the main thing is I knew about a couple of simulator, but it's like when you try to do things on your own, you first of all, at least for me, I need some motivation to do things. I
Yeah.
just procrastinate. If I find a good simulator, I will just procrastinate because there is
Yeah.
no goal, there is no there is no pushing force for me to do things.
Hmm.
uh, so I would say a good idea would be joining any because there are lots of courses which release their all slides, all their homeworks online. So I think one good idea would be just try out one course or something which has robotics simulator, all these things inside them. And I think there are
Hmm.
lots of such courses online right now. At least I would say a couple of courses from Stanford, Berkeley. Their materials are completely out, their homeworks are also completely out. So in homework, so initially I never thought homework can be useful, but I think
Yeah.
CS231 and taught me that you can learn a lot from doing things on your own.
Hmm.
So and homework can also it's not a research, there is always a specific solution, and there is a goal you want to reach. And I think for me, or at least if when I complete homework, I get some kind of I feel like, oh, I achieved something.
Right.
So yeah, so I think I would say try out any online course which has this combination of things.
True. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a very helpful information for all the students out there who are at home and would like to start working in this direction. But I think now, coming back to your journey again. So, after your master's, you started working at Facebook. So, I think this is one thing that a lot of people will be definitely interested in. That how did you get into Facebook? What was all that preparation process like?
Uh, I would say I didn't prepare specifically for Facebook. It was a common procedure for most of the companies over here. So basically, yeah, you solve a couple of coding questions first. Yeah, I think everyone knows that they have to do some level of lit code, and then you have a good hands on the coding question at least. I think the difference from like a conventional software engineering and the thing I am doing was there was also a machine learning oriented interview. But I would say most of the companies didn't ask like too deep of a question. They asked very basic question like how can you derive something, or what is the best way to solve this problem. and sometimes they can ask for like a complete derivation, but I think this was like asking for a derivation was rare. In Facebook also there were a couple of coding interviews, there were a couple of machine learning interviews, and yeah, I think it was very standard procedure. It was not different from many companies, and I didn't prepare specifically for Facebook, but I think whenever you prepare for at least machine learning jobs, you have to prepare on both the side, the coding and the machine learning side, and that's what many companies asked.
Right, right. I think, yeah, that you're right there, that it's true for almost every company.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's very helpful. And I think that lead code part, as you said, that's just unavoidable for
Yeah, I
any
think
company.
everyone
You
has.
have
Yeah,
to do it. You have
yeah,
to spend a good amount of time there.
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty helpful. So we are also now coming towards the end of the interview, and this is one thing I definitely wanted to ask you, since you have also worked in India for some time, and now you are working in the industry here for so long. Like, how do you think the scenario in India is changing when it comes to robotics in both, research and in industry? And if we want to talk about more specific, then specific to, for example, machine learning, and specific to robot learning.
So I think in India on robotics side, at least in the research, I think there are couple of academia labs. One lab I know is the lab from Triple IT Hyderabad. I think I have seen almost every year a couple of ICRA IROS paper coming from them. So I think that is a good place for robotics. Other than that, I think there are not a lot of opportunities, at least on the research side in robotics. There are a couple of companies, at least I would say, that are doing pretty good. When I was in high tech, I learned a lot. I'm not sure about the current scenario, but I think that is one opportunity. There is another one is like a gray orange robotics. I think they are huge now. I think that is one
Yeah,
opportunity, and there are a couple of startups as well. I think you interviewed one which was from Yantra, right?
yeah,
That
Rohit.
they also, yeah, Rohit.
Yeah.
They are also doing robotic stuff in India, and
Hmm.
there is another startup from Puru. I think you know Puru as well.
Puru, yeah,
So
yeah, he's
he
also
he
doing really great work.
yeah, he's also
Hmm.
doing great work. And there is one of my junior from college who also started another company called Black Coffee Robotics.
Hmm.
I think there are a couple of opportunities. I would say there are not a lot, but there are a couple of opportunities. Opportunities for robotics are definitely large over here as compared to US. But I think Indian market is growing. I would say.
Hmm.
And on the machine learning side, I think there are a couple of really good academia labs. Like
Hmm.
Microsoft Research is, I think, a really good place. I have seen a couple of people working there and then directly getting into PhD at Berkeley. And I would say getting into PhD at Berkeley is really hard.
Yeah,
Yeah, at least in AI, I think it's very hard. But
exactly.
people are directly getting based on their bachelors and the work experience at Microsoft Research India. So I would say that is a pretty good place. I also met a couple of people who had newspaper from MSR India.
Hmm.
There is another company which was on the social side of AI, which is Vadwani AI.
Hmm.
I met the CTO. I think he was a pretty good guy. I think their work is mainly targeted towards India and how can they use AI to solve different challenges that are available in India. So I think that is another good place. So yeah, I think these are the there are not a lot of options, but I think I would say there are a couple of options that people can definitely explore.
Right, right. That's very right. And I think that also brings us to the end of this conversation. It was really nice talking to you. I think we learned a lot in this conversation. So, so towards the end, so there is this one thing we do with everyone. It's called this. The section is called Gyan Ki Baat,
Okay.
or your words of wisdom for
Uh,
everybody out there. So yeah, what would be your Gyan Ki Baat?
uh, so I would say कि even if you think uh, that whatever I am doing is not interesting that much, or it's not helping me a lot, but I think there is always something you can learn out of it. So for
Hmm.
some time I was also frustrated at high tech that I'm not doing a lot of good things. But I think when I came here, I realized, oh, that experience was really helpful for me. I learned a lot of hands-on experience. So even if you think that it's not too much, or it's not very innovative, or it's not something, but I think there is always opportunity to learn.
Hmm. I think that's a very nice point that you just said. So yeah, again, thank you so much, Dhiraj, for doing this. It was really nice talking to you. And yeah, I hope that whatever we discussed today is like very beneficial and helpful for everybody who is listening to this. So yeah, thank you so much again.
Thanks a lot for having me here as well. And please do like, share, and subscribe Gyan Sabha. Thank you.